hello, 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 as I nearly knock over the keyboard. What a great start. Hello, let's do some guitar exercises. Let's get better at guitar, shall we? So, today is, I'm sure you already know, just from your calendars and people out in the street celebrating, but the key of the day is F sharp. Look at that, excellent validation from the screen. So, let's quickly do a refresher of what this is all about and what goes on in my brain when I play guitar. And let's work on that together. Okay, so first things first, you can go to guitarbassmusictheory.com to get a lot more information about this. There's a video up there that explains all of this, but let's do a brief overview of all of that. So when we look at the guitar fretboard, geez, there's a lot of notes. How do we know what is what? So if you've learnt on pianos and keyboards and such, applying music theory stuff to it kind of makes sense since it moves horizontally in a linear fashion. I just realized this camera's on super wide mode. Let's do a live zoom. Oh dear, is it gonna let us do a live zoom? Yes, it is. There we go. Excellent. We're good. Bear with me. Right, so when we move that on over to the guitar fretboard, it gets a little confusing since we can go left, right, up and down, diagonally, back in time. We can do it all. So how do we know what goes with what? So taking what we know from music theory and laying things out on the piano and that sort of thing, we can break things into the major scale, which this is our major scale. We're just doing a high overview, so we break things down into more detail at guitarbassmusictheory.com, but we take the major scale. In amongst that, that gives us the correct notes in the key. In amongst that are what are called blue notes, and those are what you would think of as wrong notes, but they're then that's where you get all the spice and the different characteristics that jazz and blues have, all these different feels. It's mainly to achieve a sense of tension and different types of tension, and it just gives you a bit more character and almost an accent to your playing. There's also what are called modes, that essentially if you repeat the major scale, because it all just repeats over and over, then it's where we would base our starting point or our home, and everything, the tension then builds to that point, and then there are 7 modes that then align with each of our notes that just go through. So what does all that mean for guitar? Well, if we were to put a big stamp, if you will, for the major scale across the fretboard, we could, and it would look like this, but that's a little bit confusing. So we can use modes to then break it down, and then we end up discovering, again, guitarbassmusictheory.com breaks this down in that video a little more clearer and a little slower, but we end up with these mode shapes that then just start on each of our 7 scale positions that just make life so much easier. In each, easy for me to say, of these scale shapes, these mode shapes rather, we have all 7 of our chords, we have those blue notes that we were talking about, and so then we can find each of them in each little hand position. It works out so conveniently, and then we can just move up the scale. We'll run through all of them just to drill this in our head, but essentially what I'm thinking about when I'm playing is just this map, and then as long as your 1 lines up to whichever note you want to be in the key of, then it all lines up and it's all just a big pattern. So just sort of pulling your mind off the fretboard, if you will, and into this grid shape that then you can lay over it, and then you end up with these lovely little mode shapes. At the website guitarbassmusictheory.com, I made a little PDF that you can download that you can get all of these. I'll bring them up on the screen a little bit closer once we dig into them, but if you want, you can print them out, you can get all zoomed in, get all up close with them. So let's do some exercises to get this all sunk in our head. And I haven't, in fact, we should get in tune, because truthfully, I haven't even picked up the guitar today. So we're gonna do this live together. So first things first, of course, we'll get in tune, and then we'll just get started with a simple way that I found helped me just learn the note names, because for the longest time I just sort of neglected them. I know my open string names, but really taking the time to understand these, and I had a few apps and everything that then I was good at the apps, but then when I was actually in the heat of the moment of a jam or something, and someone that I felt was superior to me music knowledge wise would say something and I really didn't know like what note, and then you sort of like start panicking, and then all the knowledge you do have just evaporates. So it's just a simple way to get it drilled in our head. So first things first, let's get in tune. Obviously just E, A, D, G, B, and E. That's pretty much already in tune. Right, so we're in tune. So, as we just saw, it's just nice to sort of reacquaint yourself with the instrument and just a few things that you're comfortable with playing. I also find that with a lot of us, we have these comfort zones that we like to stick into. So all these exercises for me were just areas that I felt were uncomfortable zones, if you will. They were just areas that I knew I should work on, and I knew they like kind of intimidated me, and I felt lacking, and so I ignored it. And so now I've just decided, hey, let's work on that. And geez, those are the areas that you can improve in. What a world. So first things first, a simple way just to get things started with some note names. What is your name? What is your name? Note names. Right, note names. So, as we mentioned, actually I suppose we don't have to get into the key of the day just yet. So, when we look at the first 12 frets, because obviously everything past the 12th fret, it then just repeats. So just focus on one little block. So again, it's kind of a lot of notes here. So how do we then get all this in our head? So the way I tend to think of it, or began thinking about it, was, like I said, I learnt the apps, and I felt like they had me become good at just the app, but it didn't translate to this. I bought the stickers that you can stick to a guitar. I stuck it to another guitar fretboard. I just kind of, I don't know, I learned how to stick it to frets, I guess. It didn't stick into my brain. So then I was thinking of a computer keyboard and typing, and I never like put all those blocks in my head that I have to be able to learn it like this. I just did it. And maybe I don't even remember. I guess I was just slow at typing at first, and then you just speed up over time. So then just taking it back, literally, I don't care how long you've played, just a way to just warm up. And it's a good way, especially as I do. I have these 5 little exercises that I try to do each day. It's a lot, so doing it in one chunk is a bit optimistic, but just doing it when you have 20 minutes here, half an hour here, really helpful. This is such a good way to then get done with one, and it's easy. So just literally, we go through, I'll highlight them here. Obviously, as I mentioned, as soon as you can stop looking at a screen or a piece of paper or an app or whatever, the better. But, you know, if they're up on screen, and just take your time, and you literally just go through. Because still, sometimes I've played over 25 years, and there are still some times that I'll just, I mean, most days before I pick up the guitar, I sort of forget and feel like I've forgotten, and then just moments like that I was suddenly like, where am I? So it's just such a good way to just brush off those cobwebs. It's just like stretching before a workout or something. Which, on that note, I'm sure there's probably hand exercises that we could be doing. We'll learn all those together, but one thing at a time. So let's move on to B. And as we get more advanced, which I'll sometimes do, and if I'm just feeling particularly comfortable, then you can noodle around in that key while you're into it for like an advanced level. But hey, let's just play them. That's fine. See, just then, because I was talking, I forgot where I was for a second, which I used to feel bad when times like that happened, but then you realise that's an area to learn. It's an opportunity for growth, which is great. So let's go through, and obviously, hopefully, you're not then talking to a webcam, because that does make it slightly more tricky, but it's really good, I find, at least to try to get it into your brain while another part of your brain is doing something else. So it's just like watching something, listening to something, just so then it's, I don't know, so then it becomes second nature, if you will. It sounds so counterintuitive, but I find it really helps, again, like typing on a keyboard. The amount of times we're thinking about things, listening to something, it's really good as soon as you can, just to challenge your brain, because then when you're in those jam situations and someone asks you a question, there's usually not all that stuff going on, and so you've like trained yourself to do it in challenging circumstances, if you will. So go through to D, and you may notice that we're not doing any of the sharps or flats just yet. Don't worry about that, because we know, once we know where the naturals are, we'll know where the sharps or flats are. So just one thing at a time. And also, what I forgot to mention, since we presumably know the string names, go for the 12th fret instead of the open, for example on E, just because you already know that. So just kind of stretching your brain in little ways. So we're almost done, which is great, because then you really feel like you've done something. But this is kind of basic, but it's honestly, I feel like, a weakness of many players, and just having that second nature is like, why wouldn't you want it more solidified? So now we'll go to F. And this is an opportunity, obviously, to then work on, you can do this with a metronome if you really want to. I did that for a little while, drive yourself absolutely insane. I will spare doing that on the streams, but I highly recommend that just for good metronome work, as well as all of these exercises, really. But also, there's something to be said about allowing yourself to think. And I know the idea with then metronomes, as well as learning that rhythm, is to give yourself a sense of pressure. Like, I've got to get that answer. But there's also something to be said, I think, about being able to just look around and hang on, and what's my brain doing there? Why am I thinking that? It's good to have both. So, G, let's go through that one more time. And one of the things that worked with me with so much of this stuff, which is so silly, is to not try all that hard to learn. Just kind of like, I don't know, when I tried too hard, I feel like I developed little blocks that I have to do this in order to learn this or something. It's like, just do it, and maybe just do it slower, and be willing to sound bad and mess things up, and who cares, we're getting better. So I think that's kind of a liberating way to look at things. So there we go. So that's A through G done. We've warmed up, we've remembered how the guitar feels and how our hands work and where the notes are, and we may feel like none of that sunk in, but I promise you, in a few weeks' time, if you do that regularly, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, geez, I do know that. So, congratulations to us. We get to check the first thing off. We have done our note names. So, excellent. Right. So now, let's go. This is the trickiest one. So we started easy, and now we're going to go for the hardest one, and then it will all be smooth sailing from there. So let's jump into arpeggios. 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 Right. That is incorrect. That was key of the day there is lying to you. Don't believe it. Why is that still saying D? Right, F sharp is the key of the day today. So, what are arpeggios? As I mentioned, you can get these PDFs a lot bigger. If you want to go grab them from guitarbasedmusictheory.com right now, or just wait a moment, we'll have them a little bit clearer or a little bit larger. We'll have them individually up there. But what are our arpeggios, other than something that's tricky to say if you try to say it too quickly? They are just the same as chords. So in each of them, as I mentioned in the beginning, each of our mode shapes, we then have all 7 chords or arpeggios, which are then put together by little formulas, which I believe I can put on screen. It's a little bit, it's a bit small, sorry, but you can, as I say, we'll dive into them further. But anyway, our first is a 1-3-5. Don't worry about memorizing this right now, we'll just run through. Then our second, we have a 2-4-6. So all we'll do, we'll just go through these shapes. They stick together like a puzzle, and we'll just identify where these are. And then you quickly realize that, oh man, that's how people can play up and down the fretboard and then know where chords are and all these different, like, when you first start learning, you just think of all your chords in the open position, and then you realize that those shapes are just a small fragment of this big thing that then moves around, and those all move. So it's crazy. It's such an who made this? Insane. Anyway, so we'll have, sorry, I skipped through 3 there. We'll have a 3-5-7 is our 3. Our 4 will be a 4-6-1. We'll then have our 5-7-2s for our 5. A 6-1-3 for our 6s. And then we come back to then the diminished, which is, without adding in blue notes, this is the most tension you can get out of it. It's called a diminished chord or arpeggio. It's the diminished area of the mode, and that's what really asks to be resolved. It then is leading back into that 1. Those blue notes then kind of change where we can have tension and everything, but for now, just keeping things simple. This is where things, and also can get kind of ugly too, which is kind of fun. But you always have to resolve it properly, otherwise you just get left with but as long as you make it feel intentional, then everyone's like, whoa, he must know music theory. That's the secret. So let's dive in a little bit deeper into our shapes. So as we mentioned, the key of the day today is F sharp. So that means that we will line our 1 up with F sharp, which we know F, we found that there, and we found G, so then we have F sharp in the middle. So what this means is we line this one with that, and then everything else, all these other shapes, will connect together, and it will all just then stay in place. So as long as you keep all that together, you suddenly realize everywhere you can go. And then these arpeggios, that's then just playing the 1 in all different positions. So it sounds essentially the same, which hats off to you then if you're translating written like music off a music staff onto the guitar. I need to speak with like a classical player. Like, how do you decide where you're playing it? Incredible. But what I mentioned then about the open position chords, then you suddenly recognize shapes. For example, this is in the shape of Lydian, there's a 1 chord that essentially is barring 3 notes together, and then barring these. This is a horrible explanation, but it's essentially your A major chord, which you're used to playing here is just open strings. It's just barring it up here. So all of those shapes, you're just getting like the tip of the iceberg there, and it's a lot easier than you think, or it can be, depending how you think, I suppose. So anyway, let's quit your jabbering and get on into it. So let's back up a little bit, because since we're F sharp, that means that we have, I need to clear my throat for a second. That means we have a space for here. Now, often in some keys, which are a lot more fun on guitar, you then have open strings. In this one, you don't. Because you have that then bumping up to the open, to the nut and to the open string. So, it does make things easy though, because when we run through arpeggios with an open string, I don't know, that's a challenge. It's a good area to lean on, but this way we can just dive straight in. So we'll have Locrian. You won't have to worry about getting the names in your head right away. You'll get used to them over time, just like the note names. Just keep using them. People use them. And then it's weird as soon as you start using actual names for things. People, like, again, just assume you then know the thing. It's like, I just heard the word that you were saying. So this is Locrian, this little shape. So then let's go through, starting again, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3. And what I'm trying to do, although they're up on screen, my challenge to myself is getting what's on screen into my brain. So as I'm playing through these, I'm really trying to really visualize it, paint a little picture that's just for you in your head, and see where they line up. And anytime you aren't seeing it, then just stop and be like, oh, okay, I was just doing that one on autopilot. It's so easy, especially as we do these often, and it's because they're the same shapes, it's the same patterns, and you realize, oh wow, okay, yeah, I recognize this one. This too, for example. Oh, hello. Be honest with yourself and just make sure I keep seeing it as just putting a layer of paint down each time you do it. All like, I don't know, I love like walking through the woods, like you're trailblazing, and just each time you're just digging that groove deeper and just really see it, because then the idea is then you can be very harsh on yourself or lenient on tidiness, and do it a few times. We're trailblazing here, so we'll go to the 4, and this is a perfect example. This is that A shape that if we were in another key, such as A, these guys, with that, if we move that down, then it's A. So, anyway, I think I've laboured that point a little bit, but we're just getting that, as I say, getting these trails in our head, so then there are just a bunch of ways that you can recall this information when we're jamming. You can think about it just like, I'm seeing the shapes and then still just kind of like channeling the universe and letting just magic happen. But then if I need to think, or if I'm confused, if I have that moment where I'm like, oh jeez, I'm completely lost, like where am I, what's going on, then I have several things that I can grab to. If I'm looking at the note name and then suddenly I'm like, oh, there's my root, there's a 1. I know the 7's right behind there and a 2's there. Okay, that's on that string, that must mean it's this shape, and then I can find myself again, all in like the blink of an eye. So that's all it is, just to make things, we do all of this, or at least I do all of this, so then I can have just calm times when I'm making music and just trying to access this information. So this is our ugly diminished. And then we can move on up to Ionian, which is our first mode that we can then plop just right into F sharp. And I should have said that if you really want to sound extra music theory-esque, then what we were just doing with the Locrian shape, we were in F Locrian. So doesn't that sound fancy? So now we're in F sharp Ionian because we're in the key of F sharp. So we're in this shape, and just put the 1 where your F sharp is. And that's why, again, just get these note names. If you can only get it on your E string, you can still use it to ground yourself. You don't even have to go through all the strings, but just to make life easy for yourself, just do it. You can do it, I promise you. So there's our 1. And then we go to 2, 4, 6, which is like an E minor chord that we used to. I won't do this for every shape, but that, you'll see that repeated, and that is just a, everyone knows that. It's just that same thing, just barring. So let's go 3, 4. Ooh, that was not right. That was not right either. That was a 1. Just checking if paying attention, because I'm not. There's the 4. And now 5. Into a 6. Gonna do that again. And now into a diminished. I need to stop calling it ugly, because it's really not. Now let's move up to Dorian. So we have a 2 here, which then, since we know that we have the G here and an A here, we know we have G sharp, so we're in G sharp Dorian. And then again, we'll just go for our 1s, get that 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 5, 3, 1, 5, 3, 1, 5, 3, 2, 4, 6. That looks very sloppy. 3, 5, 7. Which is that same shape, just moved up. We had one there, and then we have this one here. So there, although you can trick yourself into thinking it's a lot, and especially when you just learn, if you just pick up a book of chords, that's so intimidating. I've never learned. I have one because it made a cool like coffee table thing, and I once thought that that was maybe the way you learn, and I guess I study all of these and then I memorize the what goes with what. No, that doesn't. For me, that's not how it sinks in. So anyway, let's go back to our G sharp Dorian. It's jabbering, so we're going to do the 2 again. Into the 3. Into then the 4. 5. 6. And that's a shape. We all recognize that shape. But we've all done that. That's like an A. If it was in the open position, that's an A minor to an E minor. So, that's the way we were after that 5. Oh, the 6 got me all excited. Let's do that again. Sorry, 3, 6. 2, 4, 7. That's a good hand stretch. That diminished in Dorian. And these are all great. For me, I used to do a lot of separate things. I think they call them like compound exercises or something, when you're working out multiple muscle groups at one point. I used to do separate hand stretches and sort of like exercises that just you play through different patterns that don't really correlate to anything. And you run through these and you accidentally end up doing like, oh geez, making your hand go in weird positions that then actually, like, that weird mutation you're forcing your hand into then translates to something that actually works when you're jamming. So I find you get a lot of hand workouts from this sort of stuff too. So let's go into Phrygian. So we had, we were G sharp in our Dorian position, which puts our 3 here, which then, since we have A and B, we have another sharp here, we have A sharp. And then if we want to just double check, if we're not sure, like I'm slightly unsure, then we know we've got a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, and then we just double check that that is still an F sharp, which since we know that's an F, and that's an E, and that's a G, we know it's F sharp. So we are all good. So let's go into A sharp, Phrygian, and start with our 1, 3, 5, 1. To move, and for me it really breaks my norms doing diminished, especially because my fingers would never, like, it just feels wrong. And then I had to think, like, why do I think I know what feels right? Like, I should be experimenting with all of them. And there was something for a while that when I first started learning guitar, I guess because I learned like power chords, so I associated chords with this sort of staggered shape. And it took me a long time to then just, oh, I can do chords then that way also. I know I was doing like a C major, but as I get up here, I realized doing this sort of stuff that, you can then build them staggering this way also. And so just little things that just, it's so fun. There's so much to explore. So let's continue on with Lydian. So Lydian, we are at B. So we are at our first natural note, which means this is our 1 at F sharp. So let's go. This is that one that I was mentioning was kind of like an A major shape. 4, 6, 2. Let's do that again. And you'll find also little things like that. I had to do it a few times because I felt there's also the diminished shape in this chord. We'll see. I hope I haven't hyped it too much. There's a bit that I've noticed that my brain has just like this little hiccup that happened there, but I was able to go through it when I know it's there and it just wants to go for the fret next to it. So then there's a spot here, and just to keep ironing out. So often I would just like ignore it and like, oh, that didn't happen. I'll get to it next time, and then I'll do it next time, and then do it again. So just slow down and like just iron out the wrinkles, all that sort of stuff. So let's see. As I say all that, let's watch it completely trip me up. So 4, 6, 1, 4, 6, 1. Oh, good. I'm worried about the diminished shape now. 5, 7, 2. 6, 1, 3. Nope. 6, 1, 3. Here it is. Excellent. Okay. Yeah, my brain for the longest time kept going there. And I'm like, it's just right next door. It's just right next door. Don't go over there. Such a weird little stagger step that is so different, which I love. So, and so much of this, by the way, this is sort of like how I imagine boxers and fighters must feel like doing drills, and then when you're actually in it, it just comes out, and then you just are doing stuff that you don't necessarily consciously think about. You might retrospectively realize what just happened. You may be planning something, but a lot of time it's just natural and comes out, which is why it's really good just to make a hand move in different ways, because then you just, it tells yourself, oh, that sort of thing can happen, and then just crazy things happen in jams. So we're in Mixolydian now. So we're at, what are we at? C sharp. Let's go fret 2. That's that same familiar shape that I got carried away with earlier. I'm not going to fall for it again. 5, 7, 3. And that's also one of... roll, I'm just going for it. 5, 7, 2. 6 on 3. 7, 2, 4. Oh no. What's tripping me up there? Come on, slow it down. I tripped up the front doorstep. Great. So, one of the challenges, one of the many challenges, is just trying not to jam. Trying to dedicate yourself. Trying to give yourself time where you can noodle around. But then be committed to then when you're doing this sort of stuff, be, okay, we're just doing this. So much easier said than done. But what I found stunted my development for a long time was my own excitement, because I'd stumble on something and it would sound so cool, and you do two chords together, that especially two chords that maybe were a bit different. I was like, oh my god, that sounds, I could just play that for ages. And then you do that, and then sort of another day goes by, and then another one, and all you did was learn two chords. Whereas if you just chill out for a little while, then in a few months' time, then you can play with all of this stuff. So I'm saying that mostly to myself, because all I want to do is just noodle right now. But let's try to stick with it. So we're in Aeolian, which, when we think of modes, this is then what's called the relative minor. So this is the sort of the most opposite emotionally speaking, the opposite, like, energetic point, so pretentious, from the major home. All that to say, if you hang around here, that's where you get like the feels and the sad stuff and the emotion that then leads into the tension of the seventh, that then brings you back to the warm, comforting part of the home. That's what all music theory waffle is. 6 is sad, if you want to just break it down into simple terms. So Aeolian. Let's go for 3. 5 with a 7 2 5. Sometimes get confused because I want to call it a 5 7 2, but then it starts on a 7, making excuses. The 5. Oh no, who put that note in there? There we go, blue note snuck in accidentally. Now we're going to a 6. And that's whole 6 being the sad point. That also translates to chords. Like that's your sad chord, and then in chord progressions and all this sort of stuff. I was intimidated by music theory for a little while because it seemed strictly intellectual, and I realised that it's kind of, they're talking about some pretty hippie stuff, and so it's kind of like everyone's speaking the same language but just describing it in different ways. And I was also worried that once, if I like peeked behind the curtain, then I would stop. I was really worried that because I was able to, before getting all this stuff in my head, I was able to jam. Like me and my buddies, we could just jam. I had no idea how it was happening. was amazing. And we had such crazy jams. I think, truthfully, a lot of it was because we had a really good bass player who did know his stuff. Or at least had the greatest ear in the world, and then could just adapt to everything and make what I was playing make sense. But I was really worried that if I did take the time to learn this stuff, that I'd stop getting those like magical messages, and suddenly I'd be on my own and have to like sit there mapping out formulas and stuff. Not at all. Like, it's just like it's teaching you how to channel more of that stuff, and then also how to communicate it. But for me, it just like it gave me a sense of certainty. Like, I wasn't relying on just magic, because there was a little bit of anxiety that's like kind of fun, that's still there, of like, oh my god, am I going to be on tonight? Am I going to be chosen to have the magic come through me? But if I'm like, there's no fish are biting at this river, I can still do enough that I'll be okay. Whereas I was fully reliant on just like, if nothing was happening, I just sucked, and I felt really bad and really like anxious, and like, oh no, I felt like I was at school and I was about to get found out that I didn't do my homework or something. And so it's just a way to like calm things down and give yourself that like rail just to like hang on to, and like, oh, here we are, I know where I am now. So sort of like having a GPS, I guess. Like, you can still walk around and stuff, but if you need to look at the GPS, and if you get lost, you have a GPS. So just get a GPS in our noggins. So let's go. We are back to Locrian, so it all repeats. There's just 7 of them, so we're back to F Locrian. One of all these exercises that I do, and it's not that hard. Oh dear. Like, it might be a bit of a struggle, and it might make your brain ache, but that's learning, and you can do it. It's so simple. It's just shapes and patterns, and it's shapes, patterns, and willingness to be bad at something. Like, just that, the refusal to look like an amateur and sound bad stops so many people, because they think, oh, it's not for me. Like, as if anyone who plays, I don't believe that anyone has ever picked up a guitar and just shredded. There's no way. There's some people that might learn quicker and just naturally have an ear for it, but everybody sucked at the beginning, and it's okay. It's great to suck, because then you can make crazy strides. You can learn 2 chords, and suddenly you've made massive progress. So you can do whatever you want. So let's go through. Let's go from 3. Also, another thing that I found, a lot of this stuff, well, the majority of this stuff is all up here. So we don't need to spend all of our time practicing with the guitar. Often you can spend who knows how long playing the guitar and not getting any better and not understanding it anymore, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But if you really picked it up to practice, I had to be really strict with myself, and after playing for 20 odd years, I took the guitar away from myself, and then just gave myself, I bought these, I'll have to pull them out so I can show them next time, empty fretboard notebooks, and then I just wrote this out, just literally thousands of times. Like, I wrote them out 1,000 times in the first notebook, and then got another notebook, split it into sections so I could write it more, like crazy. So then I feel like we can all move our fingers pretty quickly, but at least for me, when I mess up, it's because I'm thinking I'm Jimi Hendrix and can do something crazy, and I can move my fingers like it, so surely I can, and maybe if I just jump, maybe it will just happen. And it doesn't, because you don't know where to put your fingers, so if you just learn that part, suddenly your fingers can move quicker, which is crazy. Like, again, you can do other exercises to make, and again, definitely do it. Dexterity is so important, but don't forget to just train your brain, and it makes things easy too, because it kind of changes the vibe a little bit. Like, you're just hanging out with a notebook, like you can watch some TV on in the background, and you're just like doodling stuff out, and then you also remember, at least what I did, it's like, God, when's the last time I like held a pencil and wrote? Like, it feels really good, and it feels another way to then get this information into your brain. Writing as well as reading. And then if you are any good at graphic design stuff, doing this, I do graphic design work, and put together these, just putting this together. I know I've got a PDF available, you can just download it, you don't have to, but even just building this, understanding how your brain categorizes stuff, and knowing that this is just a pattern, so patterns and shapes. How do you get that in your brain? How do you learn? Make little games out of it, make it fun, because it's just the same information, just drilling it in your head over and over. I kind of mindlessly ran through that last one, that diminished shape. Oh, my brain's just fried. There we go. So that's why you have to be honest with yourself, because I nearly just skipped past that one, and I just blindly did it. Which in a jam situation, again, great. And who cares, right? But you'll know. So just be honest, because that's a cobweb. 357. Oh dear. I wish I had just a longer fretboard strictly for practices, so I can fit more notes in here, but oh dear, sorry everybody, this is very ugly. Right, just had to do that for my brain. So now let's work our way back down. So we've done Dorian up at the top, so now we are going to come back down